Hi, everybody. It's Donna Anderson, author of Lovefraud.com, and welcome to Lovefraud Live. And today we're going to do something different. Instead of listening to me talk all day, I have a guest who is Mandy Friedman. And Mandy is a licensed professional clinical counselor. And we're going to have a nice conversation. We've got a lot of good information planned for you today. So how this is going to work is that Mandy and I will have a conversation. I have my questions all drawn up here, what I'm going to ask. And then afterwards, if you have some questions, you feel free to send them along and we'll answer your questions. So let's get started. So Mandy, you are a licensed professional clinical counselor. And what else can you tell us about your qualifications?
I'm a clinically certified domestic violence counselor as well, through two different organizations. And I'm also a clinically certified on the national level as well, with the NBCC, which is our national organization. So those are the letters after my name. And right now I'm working on a certification in complex PTSD so that I can be official with my knowledge on that topic. So I can add some more letters after my name when I complete that.
Okay. So why did you specialize in treating survivors of abuse?
Well, it started with me having had an experience in my own life of being abused and being shocked that I had participated in that and trying to figure out what happened and how did I get there, and learning so much about it from a clinical perspective really opened my eyes to this whole other world that I didn't know really existed. And then with my clients, I started seeing it in their lives as well, and the effects that it had on them: familial abuse, intimate partner abuse. And from there, I decided to make this my area of specialization. So I've learned everything I can get my hands on about abusive personalities, targets of abuse, abusive relationships, and more specifically, survivors in recovery from abuse, because that's generally where I step in as a professional, is to help someone after the abuse is over and we're trying to rebuild our lives.
So just one little point, were you already a counselor when you had the abusive experience?
I was in school to be a counselor when I had the abusive experience, and I had ended that relationship and then finished up my degree, got my license, and started practicing. And right around that time is when I really did start learning a lot about it. I had been I'm lucky that I'm somebody that when I was able to break free, I felt such relief and felt so much more grounded and fortified that I kind of didn't look back for a while. And then as I started to practice as a counselor, it would just kept coming up and coming up. And of course, that's what we do as therapists, is when things from our own life is coming up with our clients, we have to work on that and address that and figure out how we can remain objective. So I decided to become book smart about it. Mm-hmm. And then that way I can speak from a position of professionalism and training, and also from a position of having had my own personal experience.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what types of abuse do your clients tell you that they've experienced?
Well, there's legal abuse, financial abuse, spiritual abuse. There's so many different types of abuse. And, you have workplace abuse, you have familial abuse, and you have intimate partner abuse. And often you'll find that a certain person will have endured all of those forms of abuse throughout their life, and it winds up on a life course for that. Not all. Mm-hmm. Me, for example, I didn't have that same life course of what I see of a lot of my clients, where there was abuse in childhood. And then there were a series of events, throughout the person's developmental stages of life. I didn't have that. I felt like that at the point where I met this person, I was independent, self-sufficient, feeling very secure in myself, feeling like I had worked hard to get where I was, to be independent and self-sufficient. And boy, it really just took me for a whirlwind. So some stories aren't the same, right? So we have situations where it's a one and done. And then you have other people where they have a series of abuse that goes on throughout their life. And then they're given a special toolbox, so to speak, that allows them to exist in those types of relationships and feel that it's sort of normal. So all the different types of abuse really work together as a system. If you go to, if it's, let's say you're a female and you're on a team, a sports team in high school, and the coach is a little too handsy, and at church, you're being told a certain thing about what it means to be a woman as a Christian. And you see what I'm saying? It can come at you from all sides. Let's say you're trying to get a divorce from someone, and that person is using legal abuse to keep you stuck and to keep you from moving forward in life. Or let's say you're being coercively controlled by someone, and so that's going to be financial abuse happening where you don't have access to resources. So it sort of can happen with one form at a time, or it can be layered in someone's life and coming from different directions.
So at Lovefraud, we talk about sociopaths, which I define as people who could have antisocial, narcissistic, borderline, or histrionic personality disorder, or psychopathy. So how would you explain what a personality disorder is?
This is a fantastic question. I love answering this question because it really clears it up for people. So personality disorders are not the same thing as mental illness. Mood disorders and other forms of mental illness, you can see that is happening on a chemical level in someone's brain. So if you have depression, your brain is depressed. And there are things that we can do, medication, talk therapy, that help straighten out those neural pathways so that you can be in remission from your depression and maintenance that condition. You can feel better and feel joy again and enjoy your life. Someone who has a personality disorder, that is their personality. They're not sick. They're not unwell. Now, you can have someone who has a personality disorder who also has a mood disorder, and they can take medication for their mood disorder. They could even go to therapy for their mood disorder and get that under control. But it would not take away the fact that they don't have empathy, or that they are, there's somebody who has a personality disorder. That's not something that we can cure, right, or take away. We can help people manage their personality disorder so that they are less harmful for people, or that they have less interpersonal conflicts and things of that nature. They can have more rewarding relationships. Not all people on that spectrum, but there are people with personality disorders that don't wind up being toxic because they figure it out, right? But it is their personality. And it would be the same. We were just talking about dogs a moment ago. Why does a dog fetch? The dog doesn't sit and go, why do I fetch? It just does, right? So someone's personality just is. And so they wouldn't necessarily have the wherewithal or self-awareness to realize, wait a second, there are other ways of looking at things. It's hard for them to have a dual consciousness, especially the farther up on the spectrum that we get that's closer to the psychopathy. That is going to be somebody who is a single purpose, single consciousness, single awareness, where it's all about what their experiences are, right? Whereas empathic individuals can have dual consciousness, and I can be aware of myself, what's going on with me, be aware of someone else and what's going on with them, and furthermore navigate that situation so that we're having meaningful conversation and no one's being harmed. But yeah, so personality disorder means that someone has a personality that is disordered, that causes them to have issues in their lives, usually interpersonal style issues, living in society style issues. But a mood disorder or mental illness is something completely different. And often you'll hear, well, they're crazy. Well, they're not crazy. They're quite sane, as a matter of fact. Right. So a mood disorder can exist with the personality disorder, but they are most certainly two separate things.
Okay. So what's the relationship between personality disorders and perpetrators of abuse?
So some personality disorders have a problem with empathy. Mm-hmm. So let's say even borderline personality disorder, and people with borderline tendencies are some of my favorite people. Mm-hmm. They love big and they love quick and they want to be close really fast. But then they have this object permanence issue where if you don't text right back, basically missing or ambiguous information gets filled in with something malevolent, with something negative that actually you're enemies and actually they need to protect themselves against you because you didn't call them right back. But yet that they really do desire to have close relationships, and they have the capacity for empathy. However, when they're in that other version of themselves where they're in the protection mode, they lack empathy and they will do very cruel, mean, horrible things, and vengeful things because they will perceive that they've been, done wrong. The other personality disorders on the spectrum, it's sort of like the lack of empathy, basically, where it comes down to, and that single purpose, single goal, single-mindedness of I want what I want and I want it right now and I deserve it. And you better give it to me because if you don't, I'm going to take it. And furthermore, I'm going to ask for more. And anything that goes wrong, I'm going to blame on you. So we have a lack of compassion. We have malevolent creativity. That's somebody who can really scheme on a level that you and I would never dream of. You watch true crime or, a documentary about some big, crime spree that somebody went on and how they worked it. And, so malevolent creativity would be part of some of those personality disorders as well. But specifically, it's the lack of self-awareness, a lack of empathy, entitlement, the belief that rules don't apply to you, that you're chronically unique and special, and that actually people are objects that you can own and control.
So which disorders are we describing there?
Cluster B personality disorder.
So all of them? Are you narcissistic, antisocial? That would apply to all of them?
Not necessarily, because it is a spectrum.
Right.
So, we have, like I say, the borderline personality disorder, and some of those individuals are lovely people and they go to therapy and they get invested in it and they do well. I have treated several people with that, with borderline personality that I don't see anymore because they've done great with it and they've got it figured out. Then if they're stressed out or something bad happens, they can revert back to old tendencies, right? And then we have histrionic personality. Some histrionic people are lovely people. They are sparkling, wonderful, on stage all the time, and they want to be liked. They want to know, am I wearing the right thing? Am I in the cool group? They just want people to like them. But then you have other people who are histrionic, like, mommy dearest, for example, where it is incredibly cruel and abusive and horrific. So it's just important to remember that even in cluster B personality disorders specifically, that it is a spectrum. And you have narcissists, for example, who are low grade, benign narcissists that you probably wouldn't even notice unless you were in an intimate partner relationship with them. And then eventually you figure out this person's kind of hollow. There's nothing back there. And it's not that they're abusive. It's just that you can't ever emotionally connect with them because they don't have the capacity for it. I call it that the light bulb isn't off. There is no light bulb. And that can help people when you're trying to really, figure the person out. Why don't they do it like we, I don't understand how, well, it's not that they misunderstand or need to be corrected. It's that the capacity isn't there. They can't. Just like I can't fetch, but the dog can, right? So it's just something that comes natural, but it is a spectrum. So you have sort of like benign types on that spectrum. And then of course you have horribly callous and sadistic abusive types that are on that spectrum as well.
So why don't we also explain what cluster B means or what that refers to?
So the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the DSM, is right here.
Yeah.
Get it without tipping my chair. This is what it looks like.
Oh boy.
Okay, so this is this is the 5th edition, and it was outdated, but even when it came out, like they take forever to put this stuff together. Everyone has their input, and it takes forever. But so within this is the diagnostic criteria for mental illness, mood disorders, behavioral disorders, personality disorders, so that we have a coded system as professionals. I can enter a code in, and a doctor in another doctor's office who's prescribing medicine sees that code, and we all know what that means. So within this diagnostic manual, we have cluster A, cluster B, and cluster C personality disorders. Cluster B personality disorders are the ones that lack empathy, that cause damage, that they're kind of antisocial types, that they need to be taught pro-social behaviors. Then we have like more eccentric class of cluster A, and we also have like a dependent class, cluster C. So that would be like dependent personality disorder. We have obsessive compulsive personality disorder and things of that nature. But cluster B are the people that I study and the people that I wanted to know all about, because that was my first question: is who does this to people?
Right.
How in the hell can somebody treat a human being like, who is this? Who does this? Right. And then after learning about them, I started learning about who do they do it to, and why they choose the people that they choose, and how that person got into that situation to begin with. But yeah, so cluster B is one of 3 clusters in our Diagnostic and Statistical Manual.
Okay. So what effect do people who have these disorders have on their partners and family members and others?
Well, it depends on your perceived value, because, they'll treat you differently based on what it is you can do for them. So you might have a very different impression of someone than somebody else has, because to you, they're a certain way, but behind the scenes, they're a different way with someone else. But so one of the things that the effect that they will have on someone in an intimate partner relationship is really scrambling and distorting reality to make you question what your perceptions and the things that are happening. And that is something that is hard to rebuild once someone has broken that down. So that's one thing that goes on, is they gaslight you. There's trickery, there's lying, there's triangulation. They have all these ways of creating a narrative, and then having life play out the narrative. So it seems like that it's real and true. But actually they're just, puppet masters and pulling the strings and making it happen that way. And then you try to tell someone that's going on, and they look at you like you're crazy. Like, who would do that? That's not a thing. She watches too much TV. Right. So they will destroy your reality. They're going to also have you questioning your identity, who you are, what your core beliefs and values are, who you thought you were. You're like, I thought I was a good person. Apparently I'm very selfish and needy and difficult and, argumentative and critical, all these things. I thought I was easygoing. I thought I was pretty much, relaxed, and hey, I don't really ask for a lot. But they're going to make you feel like that you're asking for a lot. And they're going to make you feel isolated. So people don't like you. They talk about you behind your back. They're going to say things like that. Like, you meet their family for the first time when you're dating. And then there's like this sort of, well, let's just say, you did all right. Like, what do you mean? I thought it went well. Well, they act that way in front of your face. But so now you can't trust anybody. You don't know who likes you, who doesn't like you, just really making you question everything and everyone. And then you're going to find your resources are depleting, all of them: money, time, attention, emotion. Anything that's a precious resource is now up for grabs, and you're going to find that you're going to reach for something and it's not there because they've decided they own that now.
Mm. Yeah. So when clients come into your office, what do they describe that makes you think they have a disordered person in their life?
Well, they're usually talking about how they are the problem.
Mm.
And they're speaking in a way that is sort of like explaining away bad behaviors in someone else. Yeah, but it's because he was abused in childhood, and yes, he drinks a lot, but he he didn't drink last month very much, and he's doing better. And so you're hearing a lot of this like qualifying and negotiating and minimizing of things that actually are troubling and problematic. They'll tell about, an incident that happened. They were caught lying, but then he cried and begged and went to therapy. And so things are okay now, but the person is generally a nervous wreck.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they'll have, substance use disorder too, because they're trying to, survive in their circumstance and numb themselves, or maybe the abusive person uses those substances as well. And so you can't beat them, you got to join them, sort of thing. But and also there's a history too. So if I'm hearing I was abused in childhood, and then I'm hearing when I went for help, I was re-traumatized. That's usually the kicker. That's the one that really sets things in motion. You go to tell somebody something's going on, and then you're blamed or shamed or even exploited at that point. Oh, well, she's already been doing this, and so we can keep doing this to her because she's already had this happen. And so at that point, that sets the person on a course. So then they'll have, a relationship where they're exhausted, their kids are not respectful, they don't feel empowered in their own home to make decisions, and they're work to death. They're tired and stressed out. And then there's really no help happening. There's no support or partnership. There's also no support in the self-care. So, she really has to, and I use gendered language a lot. It does, of course, we know that this happens among genders and different gender roles. However, statistically speaking, based on the people that I see, it's traditionally, generally, the men that are being abusive. So I use gendered language. But so it's usually that she is doing way too much for too many people. I'm helping this person, I'm helping this person, I'm helping this person. But the sad ones are when they come, they see that I see it, and then they don't come back because they aren't ready to face that. And I understand completely that you're not ready until you're ready. And I don't in any way, shape, or form judge that whatsoever. And my door is always open with a warm embrace when somebody decides that they are ready. But yeah, generally speaking, they're having anxiety, lots of anxiety, depression, eating issues, sleeping issues, ADD. They'll have a lot of medical problems because those stress levels will really do a number to your body. So they'll have fibromyalgia, IBS, inflammatory issues. And then as those things start to line up, and there's one person that we're not talking about yet, and eventually we will. Or they'll come in to talk about one person. And then after we talk about that person, we get some education on the matter. Then their eyes are open. Oh, no, it's not just this person. It's also with my mother, my father, that teacher, and it starts to sink in like, whoa, this has been going on for a long time. And I just thought it was normal.
So generally then, what approach do you use toward helping clients who are in these abusive relationships? Or I guess you started to talk about that. So what's the next step?
Well, I use a lot of psychoeducation because to me, to be informed about what's going on with you is one step of many. There's a lot that needs to happen, but knowing what's going on, knowing why you feel the way that you feel, how you got here, why that person is the way that they are, that there are names for these things. It's stuff that has gone on that you've told no one. And it's interesting when I get the my spidey senses are going off. And then I will sort of rattle some things off that the person hasn't even told me. And they go, like, have you been spying on me? Like, how? I've never told a soul that had, right? So it's when they see that they're not alone, that this is a thing, and there's language for it, and there's research behind it, and we know what this is. And furthermore, this very confused feeling that you have, I love this person, I'm afraid of them, I'm traumatized, but I can't, I know I need to get away from them, but I can't. Why can't I leave? All of those things, we can just stop beating ourselves up for that now. So psychoeducation is super important. And then I treat it in many ways like I would treat someone who is recovering from addiction or alcoholism, because it really does take removing a toxic presence. Furthermore, all toxic presence as much as possible. We don't have choices about a lot of things, but some things we do have choices about. We got to remove that stuff that's making us sick. And then we have to learn how to live life as a healthy person for the first time for many people. What do you mean? I can set boundaries? I can say no? Yes, you can say no. Can I change my mind? Yes, you can change your mind about something. I don't have to go along. No, you don't have to go along with that. I can set time limits on things. Yes, time limit. And just teaching somebody how to prioritize self-care and to start to not be as concerned about what other people think and feel, learning where that line is of, codependence, like what's your business, what's not your business sort of thing. You're not responsible for other people's well-being and their moods and things of that nature. So we really work in terms of cognitive behavioral therapy, changing our thinking, changing our behaviors, mindfulness. And that's what helps get us through those really tough moments where we're torn, where we're feeling depressed or anxious or triggered. So mindfulness is a really, really great helper. And then again, learning how to prioritize self-care in your life and to build a lifestyle that allows you to be healthy as best as you can in your circumstance. And I often will say it might start with a shelf. It's your shelf that you put your little things on, something that smells good. It's your locker at work, and that becomes your bubble. That's your space. And that's where we start. And then eventually someday it's your own apartment, or eventually someday it's a new relationship, a healthy relationship, and getting to watch people come in, be where they are. And then now they're remarried or having kids with someone that's healthy. And, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. I'm walking the walk. Yes, you are. You're doing it. You're living it now. It's not just a concept. You're doing it. So helping people along that path, but having experienced it myself is a key piece, because when you go for help in the mental health industry, and you've been abused or you're being abused, unless that therapist has firsthand experience, or they just happen to have a lot of education on the topic because they decided to get educated. They say that some of the most ridiculous things, the most hurtful things, and it can really do a number on you. So to have somebody that understands and has been there, I'm able to offer that. And I'm also able to call out the BS as well. Okay, but you answered the phone because, well, I just thought it might be important. No, you answered the phone because you want to talk to them. And then that's okay. We don't need an excuse. Just go ahead and say, because I miss them and I wanted to talk to them. That's fine. So being able to say, yeah, but I know I've been there myself. So the excuse you're using isn't going to fly with me. But also to be able to show a lot of empathy and patience and trying to meet people where they are in their process.
So next week, you'll be presenting a webinar on Lovefraud. You've already done 4 webinars, and this will be your 5th webinar. And the topic is how understanding empathy and emotional intelligence protects you from abuse and enriches your life. So if people take the webinar, what are they going to learn briefly, or how will it help them?
So in recovery from abuse and having had experienced narcissistic abuse, or if you were in a relationship with a psychopath or sociopath, part of your healing is to develop environments and dynamics and relationships with people who are good for you, and to be able to navigate away from people who trigger you or who aren't good for you. And one of the things that I have found working with my clients is that my clients are very triggered by low empathy individuals or low empathy settings, and also the lack of emotional intelligence, whether that's a setting or a person, because we can be in environments that are low empathy environments. Depending on a corporate job that you might have, you might really be a shark swimming with sharks. Or perhaps you're a man that is in the military with a bunch of people that, you don't talk about your innermost feelings and things like that. And so there's a number of environments that can be low empathy environments for people. I know that the reason why this is difficult is because it reminds you of the situations that you were in, and it reminds you of the way that you were treated. It reminds you of feeling unheard, unknown, misunderstood, mischaracterized, having to explain yourself about things that are just basic human being stuff. Like, why am I having to tell this person this? Like, it don't people just know that, and it becomes very sort of scary. You feel unsafe, and you feel like that, okay, I really need to be in protection mode. Well, if that's your family, or if that's your kid, or if that's your workplace, we need to have a way of verbalizing what's going on, understanding what the person's capacities are, right? And then furthermore, how do I interact with this person but also protect myself at the same time? So because I found that survivors tend to be triggered by these individuals or by these environments, a part of the recovery process is learning about it, the psychoeducation piece. And what is empathy? Where does it come from? Why do people have it? Why do people not have it? What is emotional intelligence? What's the difference between empathy and emotional intelligence? And how do I find these things in other people? So the webinar is going to basically tell you all about empathy, emotional intelligence, how to spot people that have it, how to spot people that where they have a deficit that's lacking. And then also, how do you navigate that? How do we maneuver in that kind of an environment so that we're still, feeling like a little more emotionally safe? So yeah, all about emotional intelligence, all about empathy. And that way you understand what meaning that has in your life as a survivor, why that you're triggered by someone with low empathy, because you were raised in a low empathy environment. And now if you catch a whiff of it, your parts of your brain remember. You don't even realize with your eyeballs what's going on, but your brain does. And all of a sudden you're sweaty, your mouth is dry, you're feeling discombobulated and dizzy. And it's all because it's reminiscent of something from the past that your brain remembers, right? So a low empathy environment can do something like that to you. But if you're prepared and walking in, all right, this is a place that does this to me. I'm going to use some emotional shielding here. I'm going to set my time limits. I'm going to be in there for 15 minutes and I'm gone. And those are ways that we can then still exist, around it, because sometimes we don't have a choice. But also protect ourselves and know why it is we don't like this person, why this person triggers us. Quit trying to make yourself like them. It's got to be me. Am I being judgmental? I'm probably being harsh. I'm sure they didn't mean it that way. And we talk ourselves out of it all the time. Like, did you hear that comment? Oh, I mean, he's a nice guy. He wouldn't. I'm sure that it's me. I need to go and take a nap. I'm sure I'm just cranky. I need some chocolate. No, there's something about this person that is rubbing you the wrong way. There's probably a reason for that. Right. Before we move to questions, there's a book that I recommend for everybody. And that is the book is The Gift of Fear.
Oh, yes.
And if you haven't read it, you got to read it, because it describes what is so important about your instincts and this phenomenon of how we talk ourselves out of our instincts on a regular basis. So that sort of links into the topic that we'll be covering in the webinar.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, we have a lot of chatting going on here, so I'm going to take a look and see what we have. But in the meantime, I want to remind everybody that we have Super Chat here on Love Fraud Lessons. So if you'd like to support the work of Love Fraud, you can go ahead and press the little $ button when you want to do a statement. And if you'd like to contribute to our work, that would be terrific. So let me find my glasses and take a look at what kind of questions we may have here. All right, so Katrina asks, how can you tell if a person is faking empathy?
That's a good one. How can we tell if they're faking? Well, we want to see if that person's being transactional, because sometimes they cannot help it. They can't help being transactional. So it'll seem like they're doing something out of the goodness, but just wait, because there will be an ask. There'll be something that happens after where it's like, oh, there it is. So there's a transactional nature. There's also things that when no one's looking, is there an audience, or is this something that is happening without an audience? Tears are not an indicator of empathy. In fact, it's better if we can be more scientific and objective when someone who is abusive breaks into tears and see how that affects you. All of a sudden you're caretaking them. You know, like, oh, they're upset. Oh, they're saying all the right things, right? So that would not be an indicator if someone's crying. How they talk to the server, how do they talk to people that, you know, are in the helping industries, the workers that are doing all the hard work? How do they talk about humanitarian issues? How do they talk about children? How do they talk about animals? What are their attitudes about women? What are their attitudes about sexuality? And that's where we can learn a little bit more about their levels of empathy, not in the, oh, look, they helped the old lady across the street. Well, that's really easy to do, right? They can also live by a code. They know what it means to be a good man, to be a hero, right? Heroes, right? We can live by a code, right? But what we're looking for is we're looking for attitudes and beliefs about humans, about you know, say, for example, populations that are struggling and marginalized. Do they deserve that because, you know, they choose to live some life, you know what I mean? Like, what are those attitudes towards other populations that are different, that aren't us? Is there a kindness about it? Or is there a judgment and sort of cold harshness about it? So the nice deeds that are grandiose, the love bombing type stuff, and like, look, this nice thing I did, that's never, ever evidence. It's always in the more subtle things that we do. If you're sick, if you're vomiting, are they in the other room not helping and just, you know? So when you're struggling, do they have the instinct to support you and help you in that ugly moment and give you grace and dignity and respect in that moment, right? So it's the subtle stuff that shows us if somebody has empathy or not.
Okay, so let's see. Love Peace asks, how do they manage to turn everyone against us?
Triangulation is one of the key ones. They are really good at involving a third party of some sort. And so they plant little seeds among your people, and they do it in crafty ways. They'll often do it with a sense of like, they're not complaining about you. They are opening up and being vulnerable about how much that you struggle, and that they like to, that they've been helping you. But, you know, it takes its toll. And sometimes she doesn't take her medication, and, you know, she gets really angry out of nowhere. And sometimes I feel like I can't do anything right, you know, and they're just a really nice person, and they know who to be nice to. And they always have a reactive abuse as well. Somebody who's really duplicitous. They love reactive abuse, meaning they poke. And then when you react, then it's, look, she's crazy, you know, and there's an audience. Inevitably, it's like at a family gathering, you finally lose it. And everybody's like, oh, she must have had too much drink. I heard that she drinks too much. He said that she had a DUI. Oh my, you know. And so he's really, or she is really good at planting little seeds of doubt, so that people don't trust you or people don't believe you. And when you have an emotional reaction, it's because there's something wrong with you, and things like that. So triangulation is one of them. Mm-hmm. Divide and conquer would be another way to say that, so they're going to make sure that your best friend or your family members that were your support system, now all of a sudden those relationships aren't as tight anymore. But they have the malevolent creativity as well. They know the things to say that make people start to question, oh, did you see how she did such and such? Well, I'm sure she didn't mean it that way. I'm sure it was nothing, so they'll act like dumb about it and like, I don't know, but then turn around and be like, she's the most wonderful wife ever, on Facebook. Look at how she's a great mother. So then you see that and you're like, what a nice guy. He's he's putting her on a pedestal. What a great father and husband, so they're fake. They're great actors. They deserve Academy Awards.
Right. Well, Mandy, this has been wonderful. And I really thank you for being willing to share your expertise with all of Lovefraud. And there will be a link to Mandy's webinar, which is next week, and she'll tell you all about how to recognize empathy and how to protect yourself. So, and everybody else, thank you for joining us tonight at Lovefraud Live, and we'll see you next week. All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.